Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Marvel Plus, the podcast devoted solely to the Disney Plus Marvel series. My name is Brett Scott, I am your host, and this is the show. And if you can't tell, I'm pretty damn excited for today's episode. Not only is it the Falcon and the Winter Soldier finale, but I have such an awesome guest. And we had such a great conversation. I think you're really going to enjoy it. Today, I had Eddie Francis on to help me break down this finale. And I'll be honest, going in, I was a little nervous because Eddie, along with being a massive comic book and MCU fan and a wealth of deep cuts 90s comic book knowledge, the reason I was so nervous is because Eddie is a legitimate professional broadcaster. You know, a guy like Eddie doing what he does for a living makes me kind of feel like a ham radio operator. And so, yeah, I was a little intimidated to be talking to someone who does this for a living. But as I said, he is a legitimate professional. You know, he started out in local radio in Seattle and now works for a major tech company, which I can't reveal the name of. But you're a smart crew, and I'm sure you could figure it out if you really want. And I hope you go check out Eddie's other work if you figure it out. I will leave a link to his Twitter in the show notes. Go give him a follow. Not only is he a broadcasting host, entertainer, he also puts out some pretty great tweets. So go give him a follow. And I do as well. I have a premise for this conversation because you're going to be confused going in if I don't give you this little intro. But I hit the record button about 30 seconds too late. So you missed the very beginning of the conversation with Eddie. But as I was talking to him, like the first thing that I asked him was about his history and experience with the Uncanny X-Cast, which is how I originally discovered Eddie. Like, this is the first time I ever heard of this guy. Way back in 2006, when he was still a local radio guy, he used to call into this, obscure podcast. All podcasts were obscure back then, but, I've talked about the X-Cast a couple times on here. And if you haven't checked it out, you definitely should. If you're an X-Men fan, it's required listening, or at least it should be. But yeah, Eddie was a guy who would call in and leave voicemail messages for the Uncanny X-Cast host. And he kind of became, part of Uncanny X-Cast lore. He was like a recurring character that fans recognized almost as much as the host themselves. So, all right, so now that you understand what he's responding to in this opening to the conversation, let's not waste any more time. Let's jump into it. The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Episode 6, with Eddie Francis.
It was because I kept Googling superheroes and it kept popping up. And I was like, what's this Wikipedia? And so I was like, all right, let me dive into this podcast space. And I was super into X-Men and I saw an Uncanny X-Cast. And I was like, all right, well, let me start listening to this. And it was literally the first podcast I ever started listening to. And, like a lot of podcasts, you start feeling like these people. Rob and Brian had like a real guy next door feel to them. And, they started your voicemail number and stuff. And I was like, all right, cool. Well, I'm going to call. And originally what I used to do is I used to call with like just drunk with like girls in the background. I was part of like the X-Cast forum, and it was just like this little community of people that had similar interests. And little did I know that's what the internet was slowly going to become, just niche stuff for everybody where you could find your people. Dove into Uncanny X-Cast, was part of that community for a long, long time. And then for a minute, they kind of stopped podcasting, but I still follow Rob and Brian on like Twitter or Facebook friends, so I know what they're doing, and I know they kind of started the podcast back up, which I'm happy. And I'm just, it was always like a good group of people. And honestly, bro, I'm so blown away that we live in this time where like comic book culture is pop culture. I still literally cannot believe it. Like, I can't believe I'll talk to friends at work and they'll know who like Winter Soldier is. And I know that's like pop to everybody, but as somebody that grew up when it was counterculture, it like amazes me that people have conversations about like Vision. I'm like, you know who Vision is? It just blows my mind. So I'm just a nerd, and I was a nerd that was in the nerd space and also like whatever the cool kid space was too. So I was always been of multiple worlds, and now that
Yeah,
nerd culture is the cool culture. I love to see it, man. It's crazy.
it is. It's like I remember a time, before I'd say before the first X-Men movie came out, and and I remember just thinking how cool it would be if we ever got to see the X-Men on screen. Like back in the 90s, like mid 90s, like, man, what if they made an X-Men movie? Nah, they'll never do that. Like, and I remember even in, I think it was Wizard magazine.
Come
They
on, bro.
did,
I was gonna tell the same story. Go ahead. I was gonna tell the same story, man. Say what you're about to say, because I'm gonna follow you with it.
so they did this like casting, right?
Yep.
Casting call.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yep, and they casted that entire X-Men movie, and I think it was probably like
Clint
95.
Eastwood or something was gonna be Wolverine in one of the articles I read.
Yeah, Clint. I think it was Clint Eastwood, and the only thing they got right was Patrick Stewart, which was I think it was a no-brainer.
Yeah, obvious.
But yeah, I just remember like reading that back then and being like, can you imagine? And now you look at the landscape and it's like, yeah, now the weird people are the ones that don't know anything about these comic book characters.
Yeah, they're the odd ones out, and it's funny because you tell that story. Like I literally, this was I was reading the Wizard magazine, and by now everyone knows like the story of like how Marvel was bankrupt in the '90s and they couldn't figure it out, and comic movies were trash. And I was the kid that was like renting those Punisher movies with Dolph Lundgren and those Captain America movies. So I was reading Wizard, and I kept hearing about how they were potentially talking about making this X-Men movie, and it's pre-internet, so you don't know everything. And I remember like every trailer I would see at the time, because it isn't like now. It's hard to understand this world. Like you didn't know trailers. You would just go to the movies and you would just see what you saw. And I think it might have been Blade 2. I don't recall. And I was sitting there and I used to watch trailers for years and go, what if this is the X-Men movie? What if because all trailers have like that setup where like in a world and you would see stuff and like everything kind of had this look like it could be an X-Men movie. So I'm watching it and I remember when Wolverine popped Claw, and I was like, oh, this is it. And getting like serious chills and wanting to cry. Like I couldn't believe they were actually like this was real. Like I remember leaving the movie theater after whatever movie I saw, not caring about the movie and calling my best friend who like was in college in New Orleans at the time. And like, bro, it's real. They made the X-Men movie. It's coming out. Yep.
Yeah. And like you said, now it's like, yeah, people are talking about Vision. It's madness.
Yep.
So, yeah, man, you want to hop into this episode?
Yeah, let's hop in, bro. Yeah, I'm a free talker, man. Let's talk.
Okay, so what I usually do is I kind of do a loose walkthrough of the episode, and you can feel free to chime in at any time.
Okay.
All right, so right away, the big opening, right? The Flag Smashers are attempting to take over the GRC, and I wasn't expecting the reveal so soon.
Oh,
but
it was from jump.
Yeah, Sam swoops in straight out of the comic books, right, in this new Captain America suit. And this was, I think, like I had several times throughout this episode where it was like emotional feels. You know what I mean? It was like, it's like, that feeling like, no actual tears, but you can feel them coming on.
Yep.
And it was like when you saw him in that suit, and damn, that was a clean suit. Like that was an amazing looking suit.
As comic accurate a costume as we've seen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that brings up something too I wanted to talk about with you. Just how the MCU has been treating these costumes, like in comparison to like Fox, who was afraid to do the comic book accurate stuff, right? They had the X-Men in the all black suits, but the MCU seems to be leaning harder and harder into these comic book costumes.
I think it's a testament to Kevin Feige and the world that he laid out. Like, it wasn't overnight that we just got to see these outrageous, wild costumes. It was from the very, very jump. And the irony is I started watching the Star Wars sequels again yesterday. And it goes to show the stark difference of when you have a vision, like when you have a singular one person that says, I can lay out what I want to do 10 years from now, and here's how we're going to get there. So as opposed to Warner Brothers will obviously the mess that is, and what Star Wars has done recently. Kevin Feige from the beginning like had a vision, and no pun intended. And the difference between that and Fox and everything else is there was a slow build up to the ridiculousness of all these costumes, and now it's just 100% normal to see for us to see a guy flying around in red, white, and blue outfit with a shield and wings, and you don't even bat an eye. Like, it's absolutely amazing what they've done. And that, you know what it goes back to? And you talk about sorry, guy, I'm a talker, man. So if you start asking me questions, I'm gonna talk. I remember Iron Man and watching Iron Man and not like being astonished, like, I can't believe this is on screen. I can't believe how accurate this is. And just the complete opposite of everything we've seen before with superhero movies, excluding Superman running around in, like, you know, red and black tights. I mean, red and white. We know what I mean, red and blue tights. Yeah. And it was the post-credit scene where I absolutely lost it. Where, let's yet again set the scene if you don't remember. It was the Ultimates. We all knew when you read the Ultimates that they made Nick Fury, they redesigned him to look like Samuel L. Jackson. There were no rumors that Samuel L. Jackson was going to be in the Iron Man movie. I think we vaguely knew that they were building up Avengers in this universe. I think we understood that. So when they show the shadow of the back, and I'm sitting there like, no, they didn't. This isn't going to be Samuel L. Jackson. This better not be Samuel L. Jackson. And he does that speech where he goes, you're part of a world, whatever he says. And I just was like, oh my God, they really did it. And from the beginning, they knew it was like, we're digging into this universe, and we're going to give you fan service that isn't just for the sake of being fan service. Like, it's really going to mean something, and we're going to be true to the source material. And that goes back to, I was reading stories about how Kevin Feige used to be on like the X-Men set as like some low level, employee. And he was like sneaking comic books to people because they weren't saying true to the source material. Like, people didn't really have clues or understand what was going on. And he was like, hey guys, like, the Nightcrawler, Magneto's his mom. And no one on set knew that. So I applaud them for putting him in the position that he's in, because I mean, it's the number one IP in the world right now. The Avengers, bro, the X-Men used to kill the Avengers, and now the Avengers, like, bro, Guardians of the Galaxy is an A-level superhero team. I can't believe that's happening.
That's crazy. I know it. And I think one of the things that, and another testament to Kevin Feige, is how seriously they take the content. You know what I mean? Like, in comparison to, the terrible like 80s and 90s kind of renditions of Marvel, like they tried to do made for TV movies and stuff like that, and they were just terrible. And but just taking these characters seriously and making it like that Iron Man movie, like, it was taking the entire idea very seriously. It wasn't like like the old Superman films, like, were kind of tongue in cheek at times. They were campy.
They were campy.
Yeah, they were slapstick comedy. Like, it was, but this was like really taking it seriously, and I just thought it was fantastic.
Yeah, so my bad. Let me get you back on track. So yeah, we see the suit from the jump.
Yeah, okay. So where was I at here?
Yeah, I'm a derailer, man. My bad.
Dude, that's what podcasting's all about. I love it. Okay, so Sharon Carter reveals herself to Bucky. She has that same kind of mask tech that the Black Widow had in Winter Soldier. And she's there to help Sam and Bucky take on the Flag Smashers. And the Flag Smashers have been waiting. They planned this out. They're waiting on Sam to show up. Batroc and Sam have this throwdown. And I got a question, man. Is this the most boring villain in the entire MCU?
Yeah, I don't know his purpose, because it's like, he doesn't seem to have a superpower. I don't know why they keep throwing him out there that he's formidable. I get it. Like, it's George St. Pierre. Like, that's great. But he's absolutely useless. Like, he's just in all these movies and TV shows to get his ass whooped, basically. Yeah,
he's boring. Yeah. I don't know why they keep bringing him back. All right, so Carly is trying to convince Bucky to fight with, not against, the Flag Smashers, and Bucky's he's not having it. Like, she's like, you need to fight for something bigger than yourself, and he's like, that's what I've been doing.
Done
been
twice.
Fighting for stuff. Yep, and lost. And let's see. Sharon continues her little murder spree. It's like she's kind of a badass in this series. She takes out a flag smasher with this mercury vapor bomb, and let's see, some prominent GRC members are taken hostage on a helicopter, and that leads into one of my favorite sequences of the entire series. Right, Sam abandons his fight with Batroc, launches his shield out the window, dives out the window,
So
and
so tight.
catches it mid-flight, catches the shield mid-flight. Like, how awesome was that?
And it also bookended the first episode in the series finale because the first episode essentially started with a helicopter
Hmm.
action sequence, and this one started with a helicopter action sequence that from
Yep.
the second because coming from WandaVision, you were like, okay, this is kind of different. All right, I get it. And the first episode, I was like, yo, that is about as good as an action scene as I've seen in a television show. And like this is, I guess we got to buckle up. This is what we're getting in this show. So to book in it with both of those, and yet again another just ins. And what you know what I like about these movies too, they show me a power set for these skills that these heroes and villains have that sometimes I don't even think about. Like I never looked at Falcon and was like, oh yeah, he's cool. Like he always seemed kind of lame, and I'm like, okay, and they don't even do the wings shoot out feathers thing. Like, but they find all these cool ways to integrate his powers or lack of powers, I guess, or his equipment with what he can do in the field, and it's just sick.
Yeah, and I think this, like as you were saying, this episode along with episode one were like the big budget episodes. Obviously,
Hmm.
they were kind of boots on the ground for episodes 2 through 5. Not a lot of big like action set pieces, but since in this episode, you're right, they bring back the helicopter chase, explosions, like crazy stuff going on. And I think this is the only time we've seen something that big since the first episode.
Mm. Maybe, yeah,
Uh,
I don't recall too many huge pieces like this, so I think maybe.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we could be wrong, but yeah, for the most part,
Yeah, they're mostly just kind of melee kind of fights.
yeah, like in a
But nothing
warehouse
like
somewhere or
crazy.
something.
Yeah, might have been the first time that Sam was flying again since the first episode. But yeah, I think they kind of saved it, and I think it was smart to do that. Some people were worried that they might have blown their entire budget for this series on episode one. But I'm like, nah, dude, you know how much money they have to blow on this stuff, and like how willing they are to just put it all on the line.
Yeah, man. I mean, if anybody got it, it's Disney.
Yeah. So meanwhile, all this is going on. uh, Carly seems to be kind of having some difficulty, and this never really leads to anything. And I was kind of upset that it never really paid off. But her fellow flag smashers, they have way more of a problem with killing innocent people than she does. Like
Oh,
they can
like yeah,
see,
yeah,
they're like, this chick is mad. Like,
yeah.
what I mean? They're hesitant to follow her a little bit, and she has to convince them to say one world, one people. Like it's I don't know. I wish they would have. I wish the episode would have went into that more. Like by the end, like seeing her team kind of not follow her.
Yeah. And it seems like throughout the series, if there's any knock on it, they could have shown more. Like they talk about like the internment camps, and they didn't really dive into it or show. They did a lot of talking
Mm.
about stuff without really showing us stuff. And we've seen that there was a conflict, obviously, between Carly and her team,
Mhm.
but they didn't really dive into it. It would have been kind of cool to see conversations when she's not around. I'm like, yo, she's kind of losing it, but who knows? And
Yeah.
then a lot of this stuff too. We've heard stories about how the virus kind of changed storylines and development, and there were
Yes.
rumors about other things that might have took place. So maybe that was something they wanted to dive into, and they just weren't able to because of whatever restrictions they might have had because of COVID.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it wasn't just because of COVID, like kind of restricting things. I think it was just the fact that it was too on the nose. Like you had a series that, and if people don't know what we're talking about, there was a portion of this series cut out from what was
Yeah.
originally going to be.
Hmm.
And there was this virus that I think, from what I heard, was maybe even released on purpose, um, to kind of eradicate these refugees, right?
Yep.
Like to,
Yep.
and that was like a whole nother subplot, a whole nother storyline that we were going to be dealing with. Like maybe we would have found out who Mama Donia really was,
Hmm.
and why she was so significant to Carly and to the Flag Smashers, and maybe why they they're willing to, why her death might radicalize more people. Like
Hmm.
there was a lot there that we're kind of left wondering, like, well, why it didn't give us the importance
Yeah.
of what these people were doing as much that I think we could have gotten from that. But I get it. Like making a show about a virus that the government released upon people, like,
Not the time.
yeah,
Not the time.
exactly. So I get why they made that decision, but yeah, most of the series, I think they did a good job at editing that part of the story out.
Mm,
But that was the only place where I really ran into it.
yeah.
All right. So Bucky saves a bunch of GRC that are trapped in a burning vehicle. And this was another one of those moments for me, this is like emotional moment number 2,
Hmm.
where he gets them out and they just say thank you. And it was like the biggest thing. Like they're like, thank you for saving our lives. And just seeing Bucky get to be seen as a hero and getting to feel like a hero after all he's been going through.
It might have been the first time. And like
Mhm.
the whole, I mean, granted, like he helped save the universe from Thanos, but that's one thing. But that's the first time I can recall citizens seeing Bucky as a hero.
Yes.
And they set that up through that whole storyline throughout, like him trying to essentially avenge, and Sam having to tell him, like, look, bro, this isn't the time. You don't need to avenge. You need to make amends.
Hmm.
So that was part of like the first indication, like Bucky's finally making amends. And I'm gonna be honest with you, bro. I used to have between Sebastian Stan and what's my man's name? Falcon.
Anthony Mackie.
Anthony Mackie
Hmm.
wasn't super high on either one of those guys. Like
Same.
up and
Same.
up until recently, like it was this series where I was like, you know what, the dynamic of them, being friends and them having their moments, because it's hard. I mean, in these huge MCU movies, there's not too many moments for characters like Falcon and Winter Soldier. Like they don't have moments. So giving them these moments, it made me look at their acting performances and view them different for the first time. And like you said, it was emotional for me to see that moment where like, oh, this is the first time like Bucky gets to be a hero to people.
Yeah, and I think another thing that the MCU has done so well is take these C and D list characters, right, and bring
Hmm.
them into A level status. Like even with, Iron Man. People now you think of Iron Man as this A list huge hero, but it wasn't like that before the movie. You know what I mean?
Hell
Like,
no.
yeah. So it's like, and the same thing like Captain America. I'll be honest, I didn't care that much about Captain America. Um, and it and when they said that they were making a Captain America movie, I was like, how are they gonna make this work? Like, how are they gonna make this cool and relevant? Like, but they did it, man. They
Yeah.
they made that Captain America, like those movies, in my opinion, are the best of the 20 something movies. Like the
Yeah.
best.
I will argue with somebody Winter Soldier, excluding what we got, because I mean, Infinity Wars is a whole different beast. So take
Yeah,
out
yeah,
Infinity
yeah.
War away from it, and I would argue that Winter Soldier is the best Marvel movie.
Yeah, same. For me, it's between that and Civil War, and I just that the Russo brothers are just
Thank
masters of the
God.
craft.
Oh my God. I'm so glad we got Whedon up out the paint and the Russo. Like, who saw that coming? The Community guys making
Hmm.
the getting the keys to the Marvel franchise. Thank God.
Yeah, and that just shows you, man. Like same story you said earlier, like Kevin Feige being a underling on the set of X-Men. Like it's like this next generation of creators, man, and it's awesome to see, you know, these people like kind of rise to stardom and
Yep.
just seeing what they can do. It's crazy. It's crazy. Like Kevin
Yep.
Feige is a friggin' genius. The Russo brothers are fantastic. Like it makes this entire MCU like the way they're able to. Kevin Feige is able to recognize talent,
Yep.
right, and bring people in to direct and write, and it's insane.
And it's their love of the source material. To make the
Yeah.
analogy again, going back to Star Wars, regardless of
Mhm.
what I think about what's happened in the sequel movies, you can tell with John Favreau again and Dave Filoni the love they have for the source material and actually understanding it and knowing how to apply it to these stories. Like everyone
Yes.
knows, like Captain America, Steve Rogers, and that's very, very surface level. But actually understanding these characters, because there's a reason why these characters have lasted for 80, 50, 60 years and why people love them and gravitate to them. If you dig deeper and understand what that's about, these
Yeah.
stories end up being so much better, and it's proof in the movies.
Yeah, and it just shows people too, like, you know, comic books used to be seen as, basically cartoon level,
Hmm.
material. You know what I mean? Like it's for little kids. But like these series show you that it's a lot more um what's the word, man? Like it's a lot more
To me, they're
sophisticated. It's a lot more adult.
they're a mirror for society.
Hmm.
If you take whatever's happening in society throughout history, there's a comic books that
Yep.
reflect it. So when you get a certain crowd that's like, I don't want these movies being political, it's like you
Hmm.
don't understand what these things have been the entire time. Like we all know what the first cover of Captain America is. It's him punching Hitler. And to my
Yep.
recollection, that was a year before the US got involved with World War II, if I recall correctly. Like comic books, we all know the X-Men are the allegory for Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. We've heard these stories before. There's a great Green Arrow and Green Lantern run where like this black dude is looking at us like, you go off to Mars to save the green man, the purple man, but what do you do on Earth for the black man? Like they're always a reflection of what's going on around us.
Yeah, yeah, man. Like that, it's so true because like you said with the Captain America punching Hitler, you're right.
Yep.
That was before we got involved, and the United States at the time was kind of staying out of it on
Mm-hmm.
purpose.
Mm-hmm.
We're kind of isolationist. We're kind of like we don't want to get involved. We don't absolutely have to unless somebody attacks us. But yeah, man. Like, and then doing that in the Cap comic was like saying like, to hell with what the government's saying. Like,
Yep.
this is what should really be happening.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, fantastic stuff. And this series that we're talking about now is like it's like the epitome of that. Like it's crazy how much they take on in this series.
And
Like I
it really, I didn't think they would go there. I mean, because you can tell there's an underlying anti-war stance that's taking place throughout this that
Mhm.
I wasn't 100% sure Disney was gonna like touch as much as they did. And I'm actually shocked. I applaud them because that's what the comics have been. People on this, they see Captain America and assume like he's pro-America, he's pro-patriot, he's pro, and that's not what the character is.
No.
He's Steve Rogers, a guy that is an underdog that who is giving it's the great power, great responsibility to take away from Spider-Man a little bit. He sees the good in people and he uses his platform to try to uplift that. He's not just like whatever America does is right. That's not what Captain
Right.
America is.
Right. And I feel like yeah, the way to I guess the way to look at it is that he he has Captain America is all for the American ideal, right? The idea of America, but not so much what America is currently, whatever it
Yes.
might be. Like he's not a representative of the government. He's a representative of an idea, right?
Yep. 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 What the best version of what America should be. That's what Captain America is.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And we saw that throughout the films, like portrayed very well, like especially in Winter Soldier
Yep.
and
Civil
and then
War.
obviously in Civil War. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
he's full on against the government.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, man, for a buddy cop series, like this show took some ideas to task. Like it obviously, it's the action, the
Mm-hmm.
budget's huge, the characters and actors are fantastic, the story's great as always. Everything we love about the MCU, but on top of that, it's like I think the most socially relevant thing Marvel's put out. Like not only talking about racism head on,
Mm-hmm.
talking about a black man being at the forefront of representing the United States
Mm-hmm.
and all the stuff that brings, but also with the flag smashers and like the
Yep.
conversation about borders and immigrants and refugees and who belongs where and who doesn't belong. It's like, I don't know. I would go so far as to say like, and tell me if I'm talking out of school here, but I feel like this series is should be considered Black Panther level important. Am I wrong?
I think it's very important because what it did is it let the viewers understand that everything's gray. Like
Hmm.
every there is no good, there is no evil. In well, to a degree there is, but a lot of stuff it dabbles in the gray. Even when not to jump ahead a little bit, but even when Sam gives his speech to what's the CRC or whatever, they're
Yeah,
like,
the
"Yo,
Chiefs.
dude, how?" He was like, "I don't know how to fix it. Like, I don't know how to do it." And even then, it was like you think it's gonna be like Sam's gonna give this epilogue, and then everything's gonna be right, and even he doesn't have the answers. And
Yeah.
even with John Walker's storyline, you think he's the bad guy. He's the bad guy, but there's so much gray in that. And
Yep.
I mean, everything about Winter Soldier is gray. Like if you like, we look at Sebastian Stan now, we're like, oh, we love Winter Soldier. But I watched Civil War the other day, and even in not Civil War, I watched Winter Soldier the other day. Even in Civil War, like he's killed like Tony's parents, bro. Like Tony can't. Like, how do you let that ride? You know what I'm saying? Like Civil War, and Winter Soldier, he's taking people out. So even though we look at him as his redemptive, Zemo have to show you love Zemo. And as someone who watched those movies recently, you're like, yo, Zemo killed T'Challa's dad, bro. Like, this isn't all good. Like, these Wakandans should want to take Zemo out. Like, so it just dove into the gray of what our society is where we think we're on one side that's good, but somebody else from a different perspective, we're the bad guy.
Yeah, you know what's cool about the fact that Anthony Mackie is playing this character. I was just recently watching this interview with him that he did. Have you ever seen that movie Black or White?
No, I don't recall. No.
Okay, so in this movie, this white family has a biracial granddaughter that they're taking care of, and the dad is nowhere in the picture, and the mom has passed away, and something happens to where the family is trying to get this child back. The biological family is trying to get the child back. And she's been being raised by her grandparents. So it's a very it's a very big story about race, like this movie. And Anthony Mackie plays the lawyer who is representing the black family that wants this child. And he was giving an interview during kind of like the build up for that movie, the rollout of that movie, and his views were very similar to Sam's views in this speech at the end. And it was basically like, I don't know exactly how to fix things, but the most important thing is that we need to be having the conversation.
Yeah.
Like we got to figure it out. Like we can't just go, well, we don't know what to do, so we don't do nothing. Like we have to figure it out, and it's going to take talking to each other. Like,
Yep. And that's what this movie kind of shed a light on a lot of things, and I'm glad that they did it. And then also too, a lot to take it back to collecting in the 90s. There's things that happen in media and in comics. So case in point, when I was a kid, as a black person, I don't know, I'm black. I don't know if people know that. As a black person, you're always looking for representation, whether it's purposeful or inadvertent. You just kind of like, you gravitate towards people that look like you. And when I would read comic books in the 90s, I didn't know what it was, but a lot of the dialogue in the comics I was reading with, characters like Black Panther, characters like Bishop, or whoever the black character would be, it always felt off. Like it never just stuck right. Like it felt weird to me. And I didn't know what that was when I was a kid, but when you get older, you start realizing like white writers were writing black characters. And to even go back to the 70s, a lot of black exploitation films, it was like Italian or white directors. And so they were doing their interpretation of what black people talked like in the 70s. So in hindsight, we think people were walking around saying, jive, turkey, and you bull jive. But in reality, no one was talking like that. It's just, we think that because that's what the media show. So it's interesting when you have these stories that are being told and you can tell these are real black conversations that are happening. Like it doesn't fit, don't get it twisted. There was a part where Sam's speech kind of got like heavy handed and you were like, okay, we get it. But for the most part, a lot of these conversations that were happening throughout these shows, you're like, oh, okay, that seemed genuine. And it can happen. It doesn't have to be the most forced stuff. It can be like very little things like them having the cookout, or there was one conversation at the very, very beginning, which was like a very like understandable conversation, or even how Isaiah Bradley was, look, bro, you don't want those problems. Like you don't want this. It didn't feel like it was trying to be black. It just felt like being black was part of the story that was being told in a very true form.
Yeah. And that's Malcolm Spellman's kind of writing. And I think we're getting ahead here too. But they did show at the end of the series that Malcolm Spellman is actually writing Captain America 4.
Yeah.
And then we're getting, Sam Wilson Captain America. Which Yeah. I which kind of brings up this next thing too, where Walker is back in the scene. He's attacked trying to save this truck full of people, and it's dangling over the edge, and he has to decide, like, do I save this truck full of people, or do I go after this guy and get vengeance? And Sam, Walker gets attacked, so he actually can't save him. Sam swoops in, saves the people. And I thought throughout the series, this idea that people call him Black Falcon is hilarious. Like,
yeah, that's funny.
yeah, but in this scene, it's really cool because the guy's like, "Oh, that's the Black Falcon," and then the other guy corrects him. Right, and we get the first time we get someone outside of our group of heroes and stuff saying, like, "No, that's Captain America."
Such a moment, like a little cheesy, but such a moment, like such a moment. And also too, I'm glad we talked about Gray. I'm glad they did that with John Walker's story. Like, I was really ready to hate him and look at him because we know where John Walker's story goes as comic book nerds. I was really ready to hate him, but they did a good job of letting you know towards the end. It's like, yo, he's dealing with the Gray, and by nature, John Walker is a good dude, quote unquote, that's trying to do the right thing. So even with that little drone and him kind of like squinting and trying to shake the whatever thought he was having, I thought it was cool to give him a redemption story and not be super predictable and make him the bad guy.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to ask you about here next, because we did see that, like, him trying to save that truck and stuff, and he's working with everyone. It's like, and I was going to ask if you thought that was kind of too soon to be redeeming him, but I think you're right. I mean, you kind of answered it, but I think you're right that they needed to show something to keep this guy gray and not just bad going into whatever we see him in next.
Yeah, I mean, even Lamar said it. All the super soldier serum does is make you more of who you are. And John Walker has been programmed to be a government weapon. That's who he's been. So he's, you point him in direction and go, hey, man, go sell these people. And like I said, he's a good dude in theory. And he was pushed because they killed his best friend. And he took it too far because that's part of who John Walker is. I mean, they said it. Steve's the outlier. Steve is always going to be the best of the best. Like, no one's ever going to be Steve. But there's flaw in John Walker like there's flaws in all of us. And to him, those were the bad guys. It's like, I have to eliminate the bad guys. These guys are an issue. They're trying to, do whatever. And Carly was a bad guy. Carly was murdering people.
Yes.
So he went too far, but it ain't like he killed more people than Winter Soldier.
True. Yeah. And that was something that I loved. And I think Wyatt Russell did such an amazing job as John Walker as well, because just in the moments where you were supposed to hate him, you really hated him. You know what I mean? Like, he turned it on. Like, his ability, just it made the audience feel exactly the way it was supposed to. And I saw this guy was getting death threats online. That's crazy. But that is a testament to how good of an actor he is, at least in this. Like, I haven't seen him in other things, but in this series, he's top notch.
He did a great job of making us hate him, and then he also did a good job of reeling it back. I mean, he didn't go full on Joffrey on us, but yeah, man, shout out to Wyatt Russell, because he did a hell of a job. Also, second Russell to be in the MCU. His daddy is Ego the Living Planet, so that's dope.
Yep, and I thought it was funny too. There was a lot of moments throughout, like, just little mannerisms he had, or the way he, like, the inflection in his speech made you like you saw Kurt Russell for a second. You know what I mean? Like, I know it's jumping ahead again, but at the end when we get the U.S. agent reveal, and he's like, I'm back. Like,
shout out the comic too.
It felt like Kurt Russell to me. I don't know. It felt like Snake Plissken standing there.
Yeah, he was cool, man. Shout out to Wyatt, man. He did his thing.
So, you know what? I was thinking of something that I had written down here originally, and you brought up Isaiah Bradley, and I know that's kind of towards the end of the series, or at the end of the episode, but the Isaiah Bradley story, like, I thought it was so cool. I made a YouTube video, I think, and I think on this podcast early on before this series came out. Based on the trailers and kind of rumors that were going around about casting, I kind of said that I thought that they might bring Isaiah Bradley into this story somehow. And I love that they did. But the only thing that I kind of ran into, or that I wish I got more of, was I wanted, and maybe we'll still get it, I don't know, in something else, but I wanted to see some flashbacks.
I think we all did, man. We all
Like I want to
did.
see it. I want to see it. Like he's
It,
telling the story, and that was a perfect opportunity to show
mhm.
us like young Isaiah Bradley.
It was right there. And then the reality of it, the actor that's cast as Isaiah Bradley is a lot younger than he's portrayed in the show.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, yeah.
you would think it was right there. You're like, all right, cool. They're gonna give us a flashback and we'll see it. And I was ready for it too, man. And it goes back to what I said earlier. They did a lot of telling us, but sometimes they didn't show us a lot, and I wanted it bad.
Well, I felt like it was almost like you said, it was right there. It was so obvious that they could put something there. I'm
Mhm.
wondering if they did it on purpose. Like maybe they're gonna save that.
Yeah, that
Like
might be Cap 4. That might be what they decide to dive into. I mean,
it
we know
might.
what these movies are really, really good, and MCU properties in general, is they give us the setup. They give you that little, it's, we got a little bit of Black Panther before we got the Black Panther movie.
Yeah.
Even in, they give us like the little illusion of, what was it? Age of Ultron. Wakanda was on the map, and they went to Wakanda. So they've done that where they set things up a million different times, and maybe that's what we're getting. I mean, come on, bro. Like his nephew's there, so Patriot's gonna happen, and we know that
Yep.
these movies are setting, well, these TV shows are setting up a Young Avengers. So I'm assuming something's got to be down the line.
Yeah, and who knows, man? They could even with what they're doing with these series and how many they're putting out. Like, who's to say they don't just put out a little mini? Like, who's to say they don't just put out a Isaiah Bradley Captain America, 6 episode run, like to show us his story. Like that could totally happen.
They could totally like it. I'm ready for it. I want it. They could totally do it.
Mm. I saw you ever listen to Fat Man Beyond?
Is that Kevin?
Yeah, Kevin
Yeah,
Smith.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I used to a long time ago. I haven't listened to it in a while.
Yeah, so Kevin Smith and Mark Bernard, and they've been breaking down this series every week on their show. And you know, I love Mark Bernard like as a writer and kind of a commentator, but he's a little too harsh on stuff sometimes for me. Like he likes to kind of shit on stuff that it's like, come on, man, it was good. Like
Mm-hmm.
he nitpicks. I think that because he's a writer, and so when
Yeah,
he like, is picking stuff apart, he's looking from that perspective. But um, he was basically begging. He's like, Marvel, give me that. He's like, I want to write it. Let me write, Isaiah Bradley's miniseries. That would be fantastic. I don't know.
yeah.
That would be interesting.
And they could. And it's like I said, that the actor's way younger, so it's something that could be down the road. And I'm excited. I'm excited for Patriot. I'm excited for Wiccan. I'm excited for Speed. I'm excited for Kate Bishop.
Yeah. It's like the deep cuts are coming out now. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, yeah,
it was kind of, and they've built it so well that like they've given us some, at least mainstream wise, obscure characters and kind of made them prominent. And now they're going to go even deeper, like even deeper cuts and bring in stuff like, yeah, like Young Avengers, like bringing in Wanda's kids. And
bro. I haven't even
it's
every name I just said. I've never read anything of them in comics at this point. Like I just know about them from YouTube
right.
videos. Like they're going
Yes.
beyond my. I'm literally in an office full of comic book memorabilia and stuff right now, and they're going beyond my knowledge.
Same. I'm a 90s comics kid. Like
Same, yeah,
that was
yeah.
me. That was me. So it's like I don't even know anything past like maybe 2005-ish. Like I
Yep.
don't know, and I'm just hearing about it from other people who know about it. Like, I'm watching comics explained all day.
Yep.
Um, all right. So back into the story here. We get this big reveal, right? Sharon reveals herself as the power broker to Carly.
Yeah.
What do you think about this? What do you think about Sharon being the power broker?
I think a lot of times, there's only been two. With these last two Marvel series, I think our fanboyness takes over and we set the expectation so
Mm,
high that we get disappointed with the reveals.
yep.
It's kind of what happened with WandaVision. Once they introduced the fake Pietro, it was like,
Hmm.
oh, we're getting House M, we're getting this is about to be
Yeah.
that. Like we're gonna get Mephisto. So by the time you get to the actual reveal, you're like, wait, he was an actor named Boner, and where's Mephisto, and where's this, and Reed Richards wasn't the scientist. So I think
Yeah.
our expectations of whoever the power broker was gonna be were set so high where it was pretty obvious Sharon Carter was going to be the power broker.
Yep.
So once it was revealed, you're like, womp womp womp.
Yeah.
So whatever. We always that's part of comic books. We want the splash page. We want to turn over, and then all of a sudden, da da da. And even me, like I'm watching this thing, like, man, who could they introduce? Man, you think Chris Evans is gonna come back? And
Right.
the universe is so vast that they can literally do anything in this toy box. So when they don't pull deep into like a Tony Stark hologram, I think we get disappointed. So I didn't love the power broker stuff, but it's whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't either. Same as you. Is like I wanted a little more from the power broker. Like I wanted to be. I wanted it to be either someone like a deeper cuts person than the person
Yeah.
that was already in the series, or I wanted it to be someone we'd never seen before, like a new villain to deal with. And I don't know. I know it's the same thing. I had tempered my expectations a little bit because of WandaVision, because that did the same thing, like you said. Like when Magneto didn't show up, I'm like, what the hell is this?
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
like, but then going into this, I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna speculate too much. I'm not gonna, and but yeah, when it just turned out to be Sharon, and honestly, I'm still kind of wondering if it really is Sharon, because she never actually said
She didn't.
that
No.
she was the power broker.
Mm-mm.
Other people were saying it, and she just kind of like didn't say anything. And then at the end, she's still calling somebody else to check in. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think there's a small possibility that we're gonna find out later that nah, she was never the power broker. That well, you know what I mean? They do this kind of stuff all the time.
Yeah. And there's other people like we could. I don't know, man. There's so my fear with the MCU was after we got Infinity War and Endgame, I was like, I don't
Mhm.
know what they can do next. Like that was 10 years of
Yeah.
build up to get that and it was perfect. But there's still so much they can do. And we're talking about like the deep cuts. We're talking like the deep cuts are cool, but we still got X-Men, Fantastic Four,
Yeah.
Doctor Doom. Like all that's gonna be nuts. Like that's going to be like when they actually get into that, it's gonna be in game. All they're setting up secret wars. There's a million things they could do.
What's your do you have any prediction on how they're gonna bring the X-Men in?
I think WandaVision screwed it up. I thought it was going to be a reverse No More Mutants House of M type style thing. And
Mhm.
when they introduced Pietro, I was like, oh my God. It was like I almost cried. Like I couldn't believe it. Like this is about to be ridiculous. So
Yep.
now I don't know what they're going to do. Like I really have zero speculation because they haven't given us any crumbs. Like they haven't said mutants. They haven't mentioned the Fantastic Four. Doctor Doom. They haven't brought him. They might have said like, where's he from? Lakovia? Is Doctor Doom from? They
I don't know.
maybe
One of those.
yeah,
One of
one of
these
those
Eastern
fake
European.
yeah.
Yep.
They might have maybe said that. I mean, we still haven't got Neymar. I mean, there's still a million places the MCU and their television universe can go, and I
Mhm.
think it's really important that they lean on those big boys like Kate Bishop and Wiccan and all those guys are cool, but as much as I love what they did with Sam, I'm gonna go watch the movie. Don't get it twisted, but it ain't Chris Evans, man.
Yeah.
Like what I'm saying. Like we're gonna still need those tent pole. The X-Men are coming. The Fantastic
Yeah.
Four are coming, and it will happen. Like I'm at this point. Kevin Feige has so much good equity with me. He can throw anything, and I'll go watch it. Like I
Yeah.
don't give a damn about the Eternals, but I'll go watch it.
Oh, and I'm sure it'll be epic. That's the thing.
Yep.
It's like I didn't give a damn about Captain America, like I said when I saw the
Mhm.
first one. You know what I mean? Like I definitely didn't give a damn about Guardians of the Galaxy.
Didn't give a
Like
damn.
I didn't think it right. So that's how I am too. I'm like, just you know what, whatever you want to give me, man, just give it to me. Like tell me a story.
Yep.
I'm here for it.
Yep. I'm with you, bro.
So all right, back into this. We finally get Sam's speech, right, to the GRC.
Mhm.
Oh wait, I actually kind of skipped over where Sharon shoots and kills Carly, and I thought this was kind of weird, but Sam carries Carly's body out, right? Her limp,
Yeah.
dead body carries her out, slow and dramatic. Like, meanwhile, Sharon's just been shot. Like he's ignoring his actual friend Sharon, who has a
Yeah.
gunshot, probably needs medical attention, carrying the body of Carly out. Like I was like, come on, come on.
Yeah, I hate keep doing the Star Wars thing because I'm sorry, it's just fresh in my mind. I can't help it because I just watched them. It's
Yeah, yeah.
kind of like when Han Solo was just murdered by his son, spoiler alert,
Mhm.
and Chewbacca, who's Han's best friend, sees Princess Leia, who's emperor, whatever she is, whatever she's military Leia now, and just bypasses Chewbacca and goes straight to Rey. I'm like, you just met Rey. Like,
Yeah, you don't know.
why does Ray care? Help Chewbacca. Chewbacca cares.
Yeah,
I
it's his
don't know,
best
man.
friend. Exact
Yeah.
same type. Maybe not exact same level, but still, it's like this is your actual friend here. You don't even know Carly. Like maybe in the longer version of the series
Carly's
they
a
had
murderer.
Yeah.
Carly's been trying to murder you.
Yes. Yes. All right. So we after this we get the the big Sam speech
Yeah.
to the GRC where he kind of tells them about themselves. And it's a great speech. It kind of sums up the whole series and what it was about, right? And I'm not going to recite the whole speech here, but the part that like hit the hardest, I feel like, was the millions of people are going to hate me seeing me,
Yep.
in this suit, and he's like, I feel it, and there's nothing I can do to change that, but I'm still here. No super serum, no blonde hair, or blue eyes. The only power I have is that I believe we can do better.
I think that's important. And like I said, it's a little heavy handed, the entirety of the speech, but that particular part was important because not only is it a reality, I'll get to the real life aspects of it in a second, but in the comic verse, it's gonna be hard for us to see Captain America not be Chris Evans.
True.
It's going to be difficult. So for them to say it like, "Hey man, look, I know he ain't Chris Evans, but this is going to be your Captain America," while it's important for the universe for them to acknowledge. Also, very comic book accurate. That also happened in the comic books for people like, "Oh, it's being so political." Like that's what happened when Sam took over. In the real life portion of it, it's the reality. It's like as a black person, for whatever reason, people aren't going to accept you. Like you just know it. And racism isn't always so in your face. It's solely deeply integrated in American society that little things you don't even think about
Yeah,
can,
subtle.
have racist roots. So it's cool that they talked about this, they acknowledged it, and even knowing that they're going to do a part 4, which I would have never thought they would be able to do a Captain America part 4 without Chris Evans, and it's just starring. I, I keep forgetting what's Sam's real name again. Anthony Mackie. And I never would have thought Anthony Mackie could have carried a Captain America movie, but that little speech, putting it out there, is like, let us know, like, look, man, y'all gonna have to get over it. This is gonna be Captain America in these MCU films for at least one movie. Get over it.
Yeah, I feel like I saw something that you posted on Twitter, that I think hit the nail on the head. But you were like, at first you weren't buying it. Like when he handed the shield to him in Endgame, you couldn't see it. You're like, nah, that's not Captain America.
Yeah.
But you're like, but he earned it. He earned that in this series.
That's what this series was. It was him
Yep.
earning the shield. They needed if it wasn't for this 6 episode series,
Yep.
they would not be able to just throw him in the MCU as Captain America. And they damn sure wouldn't be able to give him a feature film as him as Captain America. But throughout the course of this, he earned the shield. It wasn't a hollow gesture. And not only did he earn it through the film, but through the storyline of like, oh, you are the most just of us. Because what Steve is he's always the heart, soul, and conscience of the whole, not just the Avengers, the MC universe. He ties the MC, like everybody likes Captain America in the MCU. As far as the Punisher likes Captain America. The Punisher. You know what I'm saying? So what he is more than anything in the MCU is it's the I can do this all day. Like no matter what, Steve is going to stand tall, and Steve is going to do what he feels is just, whether it's right or wrong. And Tony has his flaws, and Bruce has his flaws, and Thor has his flaws. But through it all, you can always trust Steve to be more. I was watching the Earth's Mightiest Heroes cartoon, and there was a part with Zemo in it, and he made the Avengers promise to like let him do something, and like Tony promised, and he's like no. He looks at Steve, Zemo does, and he's like no, you promise. And
Yeah.
it means more when it's Steve. And through these 6 episodes, you see like, oh, you were built from the same cloth that Steve Rogers is built from. And we saw it from the beginning when we first saw you in Winter Soldier, and we saw it all the way leading up through the MCU, and specifically because they finally gave your character room to breathe. We saw it in this series.
Yeah, and I think just to top that off, they they had this series be all about the super soldier serum, which Sam would not take.
Hmm.
And that just topped it off. It was like, you know, he doesn't want that leg up. Like he's not about the workaround. He's much like Steve, he's got that moral compass. You know,
Hmm.
he's becoming that moral compass for everyone
Hmm.
around
Hmm.
him.
Hmm.
Yeah, fantastic,
And
fantastic.
it goes back to how he was introduced to us. He was like a PTSD counselor for
Yep.
vets, and that's who he is. But Steve, more than anything, is Steve.
Hmm.
Sam is Sam. He just
Yep.
has abilities, and Thor's a god, and Hulk is one of the most powerful people. Tony's like a billionaire, but what defines them is a man that they are, the man in
Yep.
the costume.
Yep. And that was always the thing about, you remember in the first Captain America movie about him being a good man. Like
Yep.
when it came down to it, it wasn't about being the best soldier, it was about being the best man. And that's
This
that's still where
You're
we're
gonna make
at
me
now.
tear up. You have no idea how much I love Captain America. Like I love Captain America so much. Like I get why people don't like him, but I've always known this part of Captain America. There's this speech that he gives in this Earth's Mightiest Heroes cartoon where
Yeah. I love
Spider-Man is
that card.
getting, oh my god, such a good cartoon. Spider-Man's getting drugged through the mud by J. Jonah Jameson, and it's a part after Cap was he was a Skrull, and he
Mhm.
was like he's caught on camera doing bad stuff, and now the media is going in on Captain America, and he gives this like speech to Spider-Man. Is like, I know who you are. I talked to the firemen, the police officers, and the people you help, and he like gives this great dialogue. And at the end, I'm like getting emotional, and then Spider-Man goes, "Can I be your partner?" It's just like perfect. That's who Cap is, man. He's always, bro. I love Captain America so much. He might be. He's my second favorite MCU character behind Spider-Man. Like I love him.
Yeah, I love Cap. Obviously, the movies, like I said, have been definitely the best of all the. I mean, this is so many movies. We've never seen anything like this. Like, what is
Nah.
it, 23 movies now? And then the
Yeah.
series on top of it.
Uh,
It's insane.
uh, and I didn't love the first Captain, the first MCU rollout, the Phase One. It was
Mhm.
it was cool. It was a good setup. Like I didn't love Captain America, the original one. Like I loved Iron Man. The first two Thors are like man. But
Yeah.
right when they got to Winter Soldier, it was like pew. I was like, all right, cool. Like we're out here. Like I love this stuff. Like I'm all the way in, bro. It's
Yeah.
Brett, I could talk about this all day, man. I love this stuff, and I can't believe it's pop culture. Like I really can't believe, man. I spent so many times like walking in comic book stores when I was a kid with no money just to look at comic books, and
Yep.
now it's like, bro, unbelievable.
Man, I'm definitely gonna have to have you back on too, man, to talk about some of these other series like Loki. And I think honestly, I might have trouble finding guests for What If. I don't know how many people are into that, but
Oh,
I
I
want
love
to talk to
animated.
people about that.
I'm here, and also too, man. Shout out to One If because it's going to be as at least from what we know, it's going to be the last performance that Chadwick Boseman gave as Black Panther.
Yep. Yep.
So that's gonna be crazy, man. That's gonna be special.
All right, so just a couple more things to get through here in the episode. We got the U.S. agent reveal. What do you think about that costume?
Very comic book accurate. I loved it.
Mhm.
Seeing YouTube videos talking about how like white represents purity and there's no white in his costume. I like the setup because he's not the bad guy. He's in that area of like he's still trying to do the right thing. And if they keep it comic accurate, which they tend to always do, he's about to go off the deep end. And then also knowing that it's Madam Hydra that's kind of pulling the strings. Like I don't know if she's Madam Hydra yet. There in her story, she used to be a shield agent, so maybe she's somewhere in between that. But I'm with it. I like how they did it, and he had a redemptive arc, which is weird because he started off with the bad guy, but it's just hard to fill those boots of Captain America.
Yeah, and the Madam Hydra, well, the Val character says things are about to get weird. And like I don't know what that means, or if that's just kind of like some foreshadowing for, like you said, like U.S. agent going off the deep end, or
Hmm.
what that is. But it's exciting. Like
Yeah.
I'm here for that 100%.
And then maybe they'll do some weird stuff where we're not getting a lot of him. Maybe he just kind of dips in and out of the universe now that there's so much like TV stuff they can kind of play with. So
Hmm.
I'm here for it, man. I like the performance that he gave, man. He did it. I mean, I commendable, bro. Shout out to Wyatt Russell.
And then Bucky. We haven't talked about Bucky a lot here, but
Hmm.
just the kind of redemption for Bucky in this series has been fantastic too. Like, and I mean, we obviously kind of knew that he was a good guy underneath all the brainwashing and stuff like that. We've seen who he can be in some of the other films, especially in like Infinity War and stuff. But he didn't have a major role. But in this series, we get to see him actually find some redemption. He completes his list, and he finally tells the guy in the end that he is responsible for his son's death, and
Hmm. Hmm.
and doing what Sam told him, which is not going out there and avenging, but you know what was the phrase he used? You
Uh,
don't need.
amends. He said he needed to make amends, I believe, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yeah.
Um,
So
I, it's beautiful because I think not even just the character of James Buchanan, not just Bucky, is that we actually got to understand his power set a little bit more. Like they never, like, yeah, he took a super soldier serum. Like earlier when he fell from, what was it, a plane, and he just falls, and you're like, oh, okay, so he's super duper strong. That's good to know. He's not just like a super duper strong arm. And just
right.
diving into who he is as a person, it was well needed because these characters, if they're really going to be if they're really going to resonate, they need to be well rounded. And he wasn't well rounded because you're throwing him in a storyline with 30, 40 other characters. And the only movie that he was heavily featured in, he was the bad guy for the whole movie. So you
Hmm.
never got to really see who James Buchanan was. And it was so important for him, and not only for him as a man, but to understand his relationship with with uh with Sam, because the whole time they just seemed like Captain America hangers on. And so as you see Sam develop and be Captain America, you kind of wonder what is Bucky's role in this, because we all know at some point he becomes Captain America too. So I didn't know
Yep.
what Steve was going to do back in the movie. I'm like, who's going to give the shield to? Either one of these guys to be Captain America. But it's important if I'm going to root for him to understand the man and not just Winter Soldier, this unrelenting killing machine. And just even like little stuff like when him flirting with Sam's sister, it's just like, oh, like you're charming. We haven't got to see Sebastian Stan be charming. So stuff
Yeah.
like that, or the thing where he goes, "I'm right-handed," just little stuff like that. Where I'm like, "Oh,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
like I'm starting to like you. I'm rooting for you now."
Yeah, it humanizes him, and it was like, yeah, just having those little comedy beats that was great. Like that's a great having somebody that's always been super serious have some comedic lines. It
Yeah.
it does that in a quick way. Kind of brings you around to like, oh, I kind of like this guy. Like he's got jokes. Like I love
Yeah,
it.
yep. And he wasn't beating you over the head. It wasn't like James Gunn, and I love James Gunn. Not making fun of James Gunn. It's not
Mhm.
like James Gunn, comedy guy. It's just humanized him. It was like these little
Right.
moments where you're like, oh yeah, I guess you would be right-handed, and
Yeah.
little things like that go such a long way with the character. And I don't know what they'll do with him next. I don't even know if I want to see a just Winter Soldier or anything. But
Right.
going forward in Captain America 4, if there's a lot of Bucky in it, I would love to see it.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I think now they are actual. Before they were just buddies that hung around each other because they had a friend in common. Now they're
They weren't even
actually
buddies.
friends.
Like they weren't even buddies. They were like work. What did they say earlier? Is like a work associates. Like they
Yes,
were.
yeah.
But yeah, you get to see, and it was in I think that fifth episode, you really got to see them become friends, and that little kind of montage of them working on the boat. And I just thought that
Mm.
was that episode specifically. I know we're talking about episode 6 here, but episode 5, like that was the culmination of like the Falcon and the Winter Soldier and how they become a team, right? And just showing like their friendship kind of blossom into an actual friendship, not just an acquaintance or like we know each other because of Steve. Yeah, that episode specifically made you care about them as a team, like them together.
It was my favorite episode.
It was
Um,
really, really good.
the least amount of action, but
Mhm.
and I'm not even someone that loves character development like that, but it
Mhm.
showed me why I should root for these guys. Like it showed me why I should be invested. And it had a lot of warm moments. And honestly, man, I love the cheesy 80s montage scene. It just needed some like butt rock music, some Poison or something behind it when he's
Yep.
like throwing the shield or whatnot.
Yeah.
I really, really enjoyed that episode. And it let me know like, okay, yes, I'm invested in, and not just you guys individually, but I'm invested in you guys together. Like I like both of you. It was the first time I kind of was like, you know what? Give me more of this. These two, I'm here for it.
Yeah. And that's what's funny is that was the episode with the least action, like you said,
Hmm.
but it was the longest episode as well. It was the longest episode we've gotten of all these shows. Like even
Yep.
longer than this finale. And I was like, damn, like no action in that. And they did so much in that amount of time. It was crazy.
Yep. It's a real deal testament to the whole team and Malcolm and those guys and everything they put forth. And let's not act like this is easy. This isn't easy taking over these properties. I don't know how much input. Obviously, Marvel, Disney, Kevin, and those guys, they have a lot of input. But to take these beloved characters at this point and taking them out of their main space and developing them, it's a harder curve than we probably realize. And for what they've done for these first two Marvel shows, for the most part, I mean, Marvel has a few meh in the here and there,
Yeah.
but overall, they're batting 1,000.
Yeah.
Like, what hasn't been at least like my least favorite Marvel movie that I've probably seen only one time is Ant-Man and the Wasp. Like, that's probably like my least favorite, but excluding Thor 2. But back then we weren't getting a lot of these, so I watched Thor 2 a lot of times. But
Yeah.
even that, I'm like, oh, okay, cool. I'm with that. If they make another Ant-Man and Wasp, maybe I like it more.
Yeah.
This is, go ahead.
No, their worst movie is good. You know what I mean? Like that's
Yeah,
worst day, they make a pretty damn good film.
on the worst day. And then you can do all the other things where there might be a tie into this, there might be a path with this. It always feels like one of your cousins is coming back that you like is coming to your house. You're like, hey, what's
Yeah.
the little Hispanic dude that pops in the Ant-Man movies? You're like, hey, I like that guy. He pops. Paul Rudd is the most likable human being in the history of the world. Just like, oh, okay, what's her name? Evangela Lilly, or I don't even, whatever her name is. She comes in, you're like, okay, cool. Like my family's here. We can do this.
Yeah.
It's. I mean, because we see every other movie company is trying to build this universe, and none of them can figure it out. So let's not act like this is easy because they're the outlier. They can't figure out what to do with the monster universe. We already explained how DC's a mess. Like they keep trying to build these universes, and no one can figure it out except for Marvel.
Yeah, well, Marvel broke the mold. I mean, well, they created the mold. Like,
Hmm.
you're right. Everyone's trying to emulate what they've done, and it's like, is it even possible to do with anything else? I don't know. I don't know. Like, there are people who love the DC films, and a lot of people who hate them as well. But what's obvious to everyone is it is not the same thing.
And they're trying to follow the mold that Marvel created. And I'm not here to bet. I love DC. Like I told you, I'm in my
Right.
comic book den. There's a painting of Batman right behind me right now. I love DC. I love the Green Lantern, and I hate that these movies can't figure it out. But it's as because now we know so much information. It's clear that Warner Brothers has no idea what they're doing. Like they don't.
Yeah.
Like you saw the information where they canceled the Eternal Gods or whatever. What is it? The New Gods. They canceled that. They canceled the Trenches movie. They've been in development with all. It's sloppy and it's bad. And I want to like them both equally. Like I want to be like, yeah, cool,
Yeah.
DC care, and I want them to be two different things. I don't want them to follow Marvel's mode. I want them to be their own separate style, dark, weird, whatever they want to do. And I don't win if they can't figure this together. I want all the nerd stuff everywhere. Like I spent my day yesterday watching Invincible. Like I love what they're doing with it. I want all this stuff to have its own space and be great. I don't win if DC sucks. I hate that.
Yeah, same. I think, and by the way, I saw your drawing of Invincible yesterday on Twitter. That was fantastic.
Oh, thanks, man. Appreciate it. Yeah,
But I
great
think
show.
I think the thing with DC is like maybe I think they need a Kevin Feige type, someone to really coordinate the whole thing. It's someone who can do it to that level. I don't know if there is another Kevin Feige out there, but I mean, I'm sure there is. I mean, it's a big world. There's somebody out there
Yeah.
that could do that for DC.
The problem is that I think they had theirs, and it was Zack Snyder, and they didn't
Mhm.
like the direction it was going because
Yeah.
they didn't love BVS, and then we all know what happened to Zack Snyder's, family and his daughter. She's no longer
Yeah. Yeah.
here, and he had to step away, and then they get Josh Whedon, and then all of a sudden now you had, and it seems too like if you really understand the behind the scenes of it, it seems like the executives are just money hungry. Like a part of why they rushed out Justice League was so that the execs could get their bonuses. Like,
Hmm.
no, hurry up, hurry up. They didn't even wait for Zack Snyder to kind of get over what he was dealing with. And regardless of what you think of Man of Steel and BVS and those movies, it seemed like he at least had a vision. And
Yeah.
then once they brought Joss Whedon in and they panicked and they like, all right, we're no more Cyborg movie, no more this movie. Are we going to do this? We're going to do the Batman with Ben Affleck. No, we're not going to do the Batman. Now we're going to bring in Robert Pattinson. We're going to bring the Joker. Okay, the Joker made $1 billion, so that's what we want to do. Suicide. It's just they have no vision, man. And I'm actually encouraged because of that situation that happened with James Gunn. He got to leave Marvel for a hot second, and he gets to make a Suicide Squad movie. And
Yeah.
I think that's going to be great. I think James Gunn is awesome. I'm glad he's back on Marvel, but I'm glad he got to make Suicide Squad.
Yeah.
Because
That
honestly,
trailer.
bro, they're wasting. I'm so bad with names right now. They're what's the blonde chick that plays Harley Quinn?
It's eluding me too right now.
Please, guys, sorry. I know that you're listening. Her name is like very, very easy, and everyone knows her name. I'm sorry, I just
Yes.
can't remember it right now. They're wasting her. She's great.
Yeah. I know.
Margot Robbie. They're wasting Margot
Sure.
Robbie.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. And I think that trailer we got looked great though. That James Gunn Suicide Squad.
It looks like very R-rated. Like cool,
Yes.
we're just gonna. That's what they need to do. They just need to play in a different pool. Like we're just gonna do weird stuff over here, and everything doesn't have to be a universe thing. Like if they want to do their one shots here and there. I didn't love the Joker like that, but it was very successful for them. And
Yeah.
I'm I'm optimistic that the Robert Pattinson Batman stuff can be cool. I'm kind of over a year one thing. Like I think nowadays we don't need origin stories anymore. Origin stories
Yeah.
were really important when they were getting this superhero movie stuff off the ground. But now
Yeah.
it's kind of like Spider-Man Homecoming. It's like we don't need to see Uncle Ben die. Like we've
Yeah.
seen this. Like let's just jump straight into it. And I
I
don't
don't
know
think
if
I don't think I ever need to see that again. Like Batman's parents dying, Peter Parker's uncle dying, the spider biting Peter Parker. I don't think I ever need to see those again. Like I'd be fine with it.
no one does. Like
Yeah.
none of us need to. We don't need to see that no more. And then I don't need to because isn't the Robert Pattinson isn't like basically year one Batman?
It looks like it.
I
It
don't.
looks like that's what they're doing.
I'm cool, bro. Just be Batman. I don't need to see the making of. We already did that. We've done that so many
Yeah.
times. Like I'm
Bunch
cool.
of times. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Um, well, Eddie, man, I feel like I've kept you long enough, dude. Like over an hour. I think this is probably my longest podcast yet.
Yeah, because you got a professional talker out here, bro. I could talk for a million years.
Look, man, I love it. I love it. Like this is what I want the podcast to be. So, man, I appreciate you coming on and sharing your insights. And I loved having you, man. It was a great time.
Brett, man, it's really been a pleasure, man. Thank you, man. Take care, and I appreciate you. And I'm happy, man. I'm happy that we get to have these conversations.
All right, ladies and gents, that is going to do it for the conversation with Eddie. I hope you enjoyed it. I have a feeling that you did because, in my humble opinion, we've had a lot of fantastic guest hosts and perspectives on the show. And this one, to me, is definitely top tier. I had so much fun talking to Eddie and hearing his insights on not only Falcon and the Winter Soldier, but the greater MCU as a whole. I can't wait to have him back on the show. Yeah, go give Eddie a follow at your boy Eddie on Twitter and let him know that you heard him on Marvel Plus. Also, if you have anything to add to the conversation, you can reach out to me on Twitter as well at RealBrettScott and let me know your thoughts on this episode or any of the episodes from the past. You can leave questions, comments, concerns, complaints, anything that's on your mind, or you can send the email directly to the show at marvelpluspodcast@gmail.com. And yeah, just let me know, what do you think of the show? Because I'm always looking to improve it. And if you are one of the ones who are enjoying the show, if you're a fan of Marvel Plus, don't forget to favorite or follow the podcast so that you get new episodes every Monday as soon as they drop. And if you love the podcast and you'd like to help it grow, reach a larger audience, the best thing you can do is share the episodes on social media. There's nothing like word of mouth, but a very close second to word of mouth is ratings. So, don't go out of your way, but if you happen to be listening on Apple Podcasts, do me a favor, go over and give me a quick 5-star review and, or a 5-star rating and a written review. Every one of those ratings and reviews helps the podcast reach a larger audience. There's like 1 million Marvel podcasts out there. And so I really appreciate you listening to this one. And with there being so many to choose from, it's kind of hard to stand out. And those ratings and reviews and shares really go a long way to growing the show. So if you would be so kind, I really would appreciate it. All right. Now, we've reached the end of this series, The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And normally this is where I would take a little break, but I'm thinking of doing something a little different. I'm thinking of putting together something pretty cool if I get enough feedback saying that this is something you guys want. I'm thinking about putting together a roundtable discussion, for the entire Falcon and the Winter Soldier series as a whole. And kind of the idea is to bring back some of the hosts we've already had from the past to have one big fat discussion, So if that's something you're interested in, please reach out at the email marvelpluspodcast@gmail.com or on Twitter @RealBrettScott and let me know that you're here for it. If enough people reach out, this is definitely something I want to do. I'm interested in doing this. I just want to know that it's something you guys want. After that, I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to do for the next month and a half while we wait on the Loki series. I've debated doing more episodes of the podcast, just where I talk about Disney Plus MCU news, upcoming series or casting. I don't like to dig into rumors and speculation as much when I talk about casting and stuff like that. But stuff that's actually come out. So that's another thing that if you're interested in the podcast, continuing in between series and talking about some other things, then please let me know. I'm really looking for feedback, and every bit I get helps me to craft a better show for the listeners. So far, the reception has been incredible. I really appreciate every listen and every bit of commentary that I get from listeners. So keep it coming. We're just getting started. I'm super excited to continue improving the podcast and improving the experience for the Marvel Plus community. All right. That's it. That's going to do it. Let me know what you want, and I will do my best to make it happen. As always, thank you for listening. My name is Brett Scott, and this has been Marvel Plus.